Hello, my name is Dr. George Mochocki, and welcome to the Supervision series. This week we're going to be talking about Chapter 9, Problem Solving, Decision Making, and Creativity. You're either taking me on an online class, a face-to-face class, or in one of my training workshops. So, this is from a supervisory perspective. I teach some classes or training sessions on management. Still, they all have to be problem solvers, decision making, and creativity. As a first-line supervisor, you're making on the spot, in many cases, decisions there because your process is a shorter time frame. You're actually responding to customers' demands and needs right now. They're either buying my product or buying my service, or I'm doing a service or doing something with the ultimate customer, whether it's internal or external. And so I had to make decisions quickly, and sometimes I had to be a little bit creative because there's deadlines, but still providing the customer or providing a decision that or a product or a service that is still quality. It's not just because we're in to come up with some new ideas to cut costs, and sometimes we do that to cut costs, but the quality, the integrity of our service or our product has to be maintained. That's part of the brand of not only the organization you're working for, but also the brand and the integrity of your team. So let's go into this process. And I'll just slide over. You already have access to my concept maps. You have supplemental materials that you're reading. So we'll go as a quick overview. If you're not taking me for any classes and you just happen to find me on YouTube, enjoy this. But remember, this is just a quick overview of 20 minutes, I'm hoping, overview of a full lecture and a full course curriculum that you would be taking with me that goes into a lot more detail. This is just kind of a reminder, or kind of like a capstone, an abstract, an overview of what you would have been already exposed to. Okay, so when we go at decision, remember, I'm going to look at this decision making. When do I have to make a decision? What's a decision? Okay, so when I look at decisions, it's the difference between, let me just slide this over here, problem solving, alleviate a problem. That's why I got to make a decision. Something's bothering me. What do I do? Appropriate response involves decisions. So the other thing is all decisions do not involve problems. Sometimes I just have to make an alternative. I have two good processes or good products, but I only could select one. So that's not really a problem, it's an opportunity. I have to make sure which alternative will basically provide the organization or my team a higher return on its investments. Okay, so that's what decision is. I mean, you have to select something. Every day you're making decisions. What do you say? I don't make good decisions. You make a decision. Do you get out of bed on the right side or the left side? Do you take the bus? You take the car? You take the right turn? Do you take the left turn? If you're driving and there's a train, you're looking if you're running late, you have to make the decision. Do I make the U-turn and go all the way around? I always see people make decisions. There's a lot of cars going to the U-turn. I wait a few minutes. All of a sudden the train's gone, and I keep on going. Now or sometimes I'm the one who makes a decision, makes the U-turn, and I go all over, and everyone else is thinking the same way. So it really wasn't a good decision. And after a while, I said maybe I should just wait. And that's from our past experiences, assist us in how I make future decisions, even if I'm adjusting them. You have to take this in critical thinking. As a first-line supervisor, you have to be a critical thinker. You have to be out-of-the-box thinker, and you have to be creative. And that's what this whole series is going to be about. Now, there's different kind of rational models for decision making, and the rational model. First thing, when I'm looking at the model, I have to be alert to indications and symptoms of a problem. When do I know I have to make a decision? Sometimes I'm not aware of sometimes the problem is very obvious. Other times there's something going on that says I have to adjust. I can see something going down the road. We're going the wrong path. I have to make a decision. How do I bring my team or the process or whatever to back in line to achieve the goals and objectives that I've been directed by management or customer or whoever to achieve. So I have to identify the problems, not the symptoms. Remember, a lot of times when you look at the fishbone, when you've been reading and you've heard about the fishbone, the head is the control mechanism, and all the other parts of the fish, the bones, are basically symptoms. So if you're looking at it, make sure you identify the problem, not just the symptoms. Because, if I have a rash and I put a cream on it, fine, the rash goes away. But the minute I stop, utilizing the cream, the rash comes back. I am just solving the symptom. The problem could be that I'm allergic to a cat or a dog or some kind of fiber. So I didn't really identify the problem. I identified a symptom which I thought was the problem. Okay? So I identify the problem, not the symptoms, collect the facts, and redefine the problem. Once I have the facts, I start looking at it and say, hey, am I really identifying the problem, or is it just symptoms? I identify alternatives. When I look at alternatives, at least 4. Ask for help. You should have more than one alternative, and we've been going through this for some of the other series. And the reason I need more than just one alternative, because if my main solution isn't working well, I don't go back to the drawing board. I just take my next second alternative that I was going to select anyway. I rank them 1, 2, 3, and 4, and this is my number 1. This I think will resolve it, but it's not working. Do I go to number 2? I mean, I need all of number 2. Just parts of number 1 is not working, so I already have that. So I just take something out of number 2 and I put it into number 1, and I'm going forward. Remember, when you're looking at decisions, you don't want to start redoing the whole process over again. When you're there, you try to get different alternatives. Okay? Always ask for help, and help can be from other people. Evaluate the alternatives, the costs for each alternative, how long it's going to take, what is the probability, we're going to talk about that this alternative will be successful, and what are the hazards that I have to be aware of when I'm going to implement this solution. Okay, and then choose and implement. I have to communicate to all parties, here's the new process, so I get a bias so everyone understands what's going on, and I have to have some control or measurements. Am I still on track? I changed it, but is it achieving what I wanted to achieve? And then I basically need feedback. And sometimes the feedback could be, did it work, or why did it not work? And if it didn't work, I take corrective action. I know, let's say if I have a problem of improving customer satisfaction or whatever, and I implemented something. I know there's going to be a learning curve for the individuals to catch on and go forward. But I don't want to wait all the way to the year end to find out, oh man, I really blew it. I wasn't even close. Once I see that I'm not on track, even if my customer satisfaction is going worse with my new implementation, okay, 1 month maybe just adjusting. Second month, hey, I'm going to go down. I have to do some kind of changes or some corrective action. And I get that with some kind of feedback or some measurement with a baseline. Where did I start off, and am I doing better or am I doing worse? And sometimes you could have, and we're going to show you some statistical tools you could utilize to make a good decision, some software or some group work. But even observations, you can kind of tell. And I hate to use the terminology when I look at gut feeling, but that gut feeling is not that I say this is the way to go. They're like indicators. Sometimes this is not working right. Something's not right. You can't put your hand on it, but you should use that intuitive ability that is given to all of us. We just haven't been using it a lot because we have to have always rational. Have to have everything 100%. You'll never have everything 100%. The gut feeling is just kind of like a marker to lead you which way to go. You still have to do the research and everything else to make sure that it is the right way to proceed. Okay, now human compromises. When I'm looking at human compromises, people will compromise when it comes to decisions to make a good decision. It has to be simple. Don't make the decisions very complex because basically you're going to have more problems than you started. So you look at simplicity. You look at it bonded rationality. All that means is choosing an alternative that meets the minimum standards of acceptability. That a lot of times may not be the best decision or solution, but it may minimize, and you can say, this is just a temporary fix. I have to do this now. I'm looking at a long term to repair it. So right now I've got a big pipe leak leaking all over. I don't have the material, the manpower to do it. I put a patch, tape it, or whatever they do, just to temporarily repair it until we do a long-term solution. And that could be a whole new process, replacing the whole thing. But so you have 2 stages, okay? So This one, the boundary rationality, minimal standards, acceptability for now. So let's see my chart. So when I'm looking at this, identify the problem, I choose an alternative. Does it solve the problem? Remember, you're looking at kind of a decision tree. We'll talk about later, and then later implement the solution. Okay. Now, when we're going back on here, the other thing is subjective rationality. Does it make sense? Rationalization, personal perception. When I go Regency syndrome, tendency to remember more easily those events that have occurred recently. So when I'm looking at making the decisions or looking at alternative, like it or not, you're looking at past history. What worked last time? And a lot of times the scenario may be a little different, so I adjust it for the different aspect or the different variable in there, and so I don't have to reinvent the wheel. Remember, in business, even as supervisor, my job is not to reinvent the wheel. Sometimes I have no other choice. I have to come up with a brand new wheel. But a lot of times I have the wheel, I just want to make it better, or I have a solution, I just want to adjust it. That's why when you're looking at, that's where the critical thinking skills, the creativity, the flexibility, the input from other individuals, how can we make this happen? How can we succeed our goals and objectives? Now, stereotyping rigid opinions about categories of people. And when I look at this, when I'm making a decision, and we're looking at groups and everything else, don't stereotype. Just because this person is a different ethnic background, or this person has, and some people may say this person, I'm dyslexic. Yeah, and not to the point, but I have the dyslexia. So when I'm looking at that, on that, why do I tell you that? Okay, I have dyslexia. To me, some people say, I turn things around. But because of that, that basically is a benefit. It gives me an edge over people who don't have it. Because to those who have dyslexia, I have to make all the connections connect. So when I'm looking at process improvement, it doesn't connect, it's dysfunctional, I'm going, something's wrong. And that's why a lot of times when I'm working at process improvement, it works well for me, because people say, how do you see that? How do you pick out something that doesn't fit in? Because of the way I have to frame it and remember information and still be functional and above this, I use that, what some people may see be a deficiency or a hindrance, but it becomes to me as basically for lack of better words, it's an opportunity, and it's a strength the way I look at it. Because I turned around something that other people may look at as a negative, and it becomes a very positive, and it's a good force. I could look at things, I could right away pick up, this doesn't make sense. I could rearrange things that logically, rationally will work within the whole process and organization, because I'm looking at it from a different thing. So when I'm looking at this, if you're looking at stereotyping, well, he has dyslexia, so he may not be as sharp, or he may not be as intelligent, or he may have some a hindrance to his decision process, you have to take that away. Because if you look at Einstein and a lot of the others, they all had dyslexia. And how did they do it? Because they viewed things, they processed things. All I do is I process things a little differently than somebody else does. But I just have to make the connections a little bit differently. Okay? So we've taken care of that. And now, guidelines for decision making. And here's the exhibit. And basically, I'll use this one. Consider the consequences. Respond quickly in a crisis. Don't say, okay, let's have a team and the building's on fire. Shh, pull the alarm, get the heck out, we'll worry about it later. And that's when you're doing for the training, a quick response. If you're in a crisis, you don't have time. What you're going to find out a lot of times, an individual will make a decision faster, may not be the best, or sometimes it may be even better than a person with a group, because you have to do a lot more compromising. Inform the manager. Be decisive, but yet flexible. And it's kind of, and that's the creativity comes in. Avoid decision-making traps, and we'll talk about that later on. So that takes care of that. And we're moving along pretty good. Remember, you already had the reading supplemental material. You have a lot of the sites and assessments. Are you a good decision maker? Everything else, if you're taking me to in a formal college setting or in one of the workshops that I'll be working with. And sometimes I do some training and workshops at some of the colleges that I teach at. Okay? Now, traps to look out for. If I'm looking at treating every decision like a crisis, you can't tell people, hey, it's an emergency. After a while, people, you keep on yelling, fire, fire, just to get things done. And it's, you have some time. Some decisions you have to do right away. If you have an employee comes up to you and say, hey, can I have some time off tomorrow? Oh, I'm a decision maker. Yes, I can make it now. Think about it. There's no rush on that one. I'll get back to you later on. Because you have to look at what are the consequences. If I make a decision as supervisor, do I set a precedence? Am I doing a different chain reaction? I make this person happy, but now I don't have that person as my key element. There's no, and the other two individuals, one is sick and one on vacation. So now I basically created more of a problem. I need some time to think about it. There's no problem because a lot of times you are thinking, remember we talked about that no individual is multitasking. When you think you're multitasking, you're just basically focusing on one thing at a time. So when I'm looking at that, I'm thinking about my next meeting or something else, and a problem comes in, a general problem. So I could say, hey, I understand that. I'll get back to you when I'm a little more clearer, when I could focus on your issue, your problem, or your opportunity or solution. So control that. But if this is an emergency, hey, someone got hurt, what do I do? Do I call somebody else? Those you have to think right away and get going. You don't have time to delay on that. You should respond quickly, okay? Looking over precedents when failure, spelled that one wrong. And when I'm looking at over precedents, I'm looking, as a manager, first line supervisor, or even employee, if I do something, is it going to set precedents for next time? Because even though I got the rules and policies we talked about in other series, once I set that precedence, if it comes to kind of arbitration and everything else, I've just changed my process indirectly. So I'm always, as a manager, looking at have I set precedent. Because if I give this person time off, free, for whatever reason, just because I feel good, somebody else says, hey, why didn't I get the time off? You paid for his day off, or to go to the movies, or go with to take care of the loved one, to the doctor or something else. Hey, I don't have any kids. I want to take my dog or my pet. And I'm not being sarcastic or anything. I'm just going to say, do you see what I mean? So within your group, your team members, even if you say, hey, keep this between us, they talk. There's no way around it. You got the grapevine, the informal communication process. We're going to go back there. And like so when I'm looking at this is basically when I'm looking at Voyager Traps. And these are teeth. Remember, like if I'm not a hunter, but you see enough movies when they come in there, they're spring loaded, treating every decision like a crisis, responding to inappropriately to a failure. That means, hey, I messed up. It's a failure. It's a learning. Remember, you're a learning organization. You're a learning team. That's the whole thing you learn. How do I learn from my mistakes? I use that. Okay, I feel bad. I didn't get it. How do I do better? Next time I don't do the same mistake. Because if you do the same mistake, you're no longer a learning organization. If you do the same thing you did last time, you're going to get the same outcome. Okay? Overlooking the precedents, promising too much that I can't deliver, and assuming only one choice is the right choice. Okay? So those are some traps to avoid. Okay, now here's some tools. The biggest one and the simplistic one is probability. And I know a lot of times when you're a supervisor, when you're first-line supervisors, if you're taking some colleges, you're going to take some math. What are probability? The probability that the odds that it will be successful or not successful. And I use the example over many times. If I'm going to ask somebody else on a date, or I'm going to go do something, I try to find out what's my probability that will be successful. There's software or something else, but sometimes I may do this in my mind. And if I feel that I have a 95% probability that's going to be correct, or if I'm opening up a new process or a new direction, or going to come up with a new idea, or bringing a new product line, I'm not worried. I can't guarantee anyone this can be 100% successful if I'm going to go. I can go for any kind of surgery or anything else. They're going to say you got a 90% success rate. Even the weatherman says we got a 90%, we got a 99% of sunny day, knowing that 1% to be off. But you have a higher probability. I kind of get 99%. That's a pretty good odd. But they may say there's a 60%, there's a 40%, there's a 30% chance of rain. 30%, let's go on a picnic. But you still could get caught. But you see the probability, the odds are in your favor at the higher probability of success or the higher probability of failure. So you have to be able to use the probability theory. And when I'm looking at probability theory, techniques from comparing consequences of possible decisions in a risk situation. Now the supervisor basically cannot be 100% sure of any outcome. There is nothing. I could be as protected as I can, and there's going to be Murphy's Law. I feel sorry for Mr. Murphy, but Murphy's Law. Something may go wrong. So I plan for that. Figuring it's going to go right, but I always plan for the worst case scenario and always strive for the best. Okay, but in case, so I have my range. I know I can make this go forward. If you're looking at getting 100%. A lot of companies, a lot of times when I was in the management and making decisions, if I would wait till about when I had about 70% 70% I go with the project. 10% chance of success rate. Because even once the project starts, there's other things that I might not consider that I have to put into the equation, or things that I put into the equation I don't need anymore because I overcompensated or thought about that this was going to be a failure or this is going to be an issue. It never became an issue. So when I'm looking at that 70%, now I know there's some companies and sometimes academics basically want that 100%. They never want to fail. They want to do all the research. But you do so much time in research, and it's going to take you time, and let's say it's going to take you 6 months. In 6 months, the whole scenario, the environmental forces, everything's changed. So if you've done that, you're starting again. You never go ahead. You have to go forward at a certain percentage. 75% is a good number, and it depends on the risk and depends on the consequences of a possible decision. Some people will do it at 50%. They got a 50-50 chance. They're more of a high risk taker. You can fail either way. If it's a 50, it's like tossing a coin. I would rather go more with the 75%. The more I get the information, if I got more information, then I'm happy. I could go 100% and know this is going to work. But remember, the problem, and those are going to be regular routine decision. Most times when you're making your decisions as a supervisor, you do not have all the facts, you do not have everything else, and you have to make a decision. So you're trying to look at the higher probability of the information resources I have that I would be successful. And even though it comes pretty close to what you want, but it may not be exactly the way you want it, but it achieved the goals and objectives, okay? Like we talked about the bond of rationality. Okay, so we have that. So lock this up. Now, decision trees are another thing that I could look at. A probability theory, a graph that helps decision makers use values of decisions under varying circumstances. I'll put it this way so everyone can see. I'm going to put the decision tree. When I look at the decision tree, and there's software that does that. So I come in here, here's my problem. I hired a person, yes, income, and these could be yes or no. I should go this way. If this comes this way, here's my expected value, or here's my, I don't hire the person, here's what I lose, my probability, my percentage, here's 60. So it's, you see right here, my probability is 60, it's a higher percentage, and it's only 10%. 10% is not really much. But if I have to make a 50-50 choice between things, I'd rather have 10% because it leans one way to a higher probability. Remember, the higher the probability of success rate, the better odds are that your decision will be successful. So that's a decision tree. Now, the other thing you're looking at is I'm putting it into my concept map. Really, when I use concept maps and mind maps, in business I'm looking at concepts because I'm looking at some people call mind maps. And why do they call mind map? Because your mind is basically, it doesn't logically go this way, it's all over. So if you look at my map, no matter where you're at, if I'm doing this in a lecture, I could bounce. Somebody says, what about this? I could go back to compensation. What about guidelines? I could go back over here. So I can move around this when I'm doing linearly, which a lot of times that's the way we're trained. It's harder to focus because your mind does not work that way. Your mind is like a computer. It pulls stuff from all over. So if I got a problem, it's taken from past experience. Remember, we talked about the most recent ones pop up first, but that doesn't make sense. I'm starting going back into my brain cells, my storage in the back, and try to get more information further back, or I'm trying to analyze at the same time. So when I'm looking at this, the software, for lack of better words, will help me do this. And how does the software do? There's software that, remember, decision-making software, you still have to make the decision. When I do consulting with individuals, basically, they come up to me, I give them alternatives and everything else. I say, what would you do? Now what I do, I'm presenting the options. You go to the doctor, you have two options. You could take a pill, you could take chemotherapy, you could have me cut this or repair the item, or cut this whatever issue is. I could do surgery, or I could do an invasive surgery. I could do different techniques. The doctors can say a higher probability. If you take the pill, okay, that may not resolve it. Usually people, maybe 30% it'll work, 70% doesn't. If you do the chemo, it'd be maybe 60% work. If you do the surgery, I could guarantee 70% you won't have the problem. It's over. But it's still your decision. That's why I tell them, I give you the scenarios, I give you the probability, I give you what I think the outcome should be. but you're still the manager. You're still the individual. So the software is just going to give you this way to go, but it's not going to tell you it's exactly. You still have to do it. It's between your intuition, your own experience, and your experience. You know, some people are better decision makers than others. Newer one, the software is a good guideline to help them. But down the road, after a while, again, intuition, not guessing, intuitive. You have to use that God-given intuitive ability that we've been held back. We're beginning to think too logical. The intuition is a guideline. It's like a rudder. Look at it this way. Why? A lot of times you walk, you think someone's looking at me. There's nobody. I got that feeling. All of a sudden you catch someone in the back that's walking behind you. What is that? You can't pick it. It's just something that that intuitive feeling. So I want you to develop it. I'm not trying to guess it. It's just a guideline. It tells you which direction to go. So you got formal decision-making process, databases, and spreadsheets. What does spreadsheet do? I put in formulas, what-if scenarios, and there's a lot of different softwares. If I do this, what's the probability? If I raise the cost, especially doing with pricing, it's very sensitive. There's a lot of costs. Software out there that say if I raise it by 50 cents, probability is you're going to lose 20% of your customer. If I raise it by 10%, you're only going to lose maybe 2%. So you're looking at those software, but are they right? Customers be very more sensitive than the computer. The computer is just taking data from previous experience of customers, how they reacted to the same situation, and trying to anticipate what's going forward. And that's what we do conscientiously every day without even thinking about it. Our brain is there's no computer could ever replace what you have in your brain. Use it wisely. Use it, but use this as a supplement to making those decisions, okay? Now, the other thing we're going to talk about is a group decision. What are some advantages of group decision? Group members, more alternatives, better understanding of what the problems are or the solutions, more knowledge, more people coming in there, more likely to support the implementation. We're going to talk about the disadvantages. Remember, let's just go into disadvantage. Okay, so you got more likely of input. So a lot of times a reorganization or whole process change. I try to get the groups involved because then they have a buy-in. And not only a buy-in, I'm looking at what are some of the resistance of change, and you can find out in some of these groups, and then I could compensate for that or make sure that when I do the roll it out, I've already taken that into consideration to minimize that change resistance. And that's in some other chapters. Now, what are you going to have for disadvantages? Individual is still faster than a group. Why? Because I got to compromise. I can make the decision right now by myself. Will it be as good? Sometimes the research says I may be 90% better than the group. Because in the groups, your compromise is taking you longer. But why do people do with the groups? I have more of a buy-in. Accept first workable one. Competition, pressure to conform, fall victim to groupthink. And we're going to talk, I got a whole thing on groupthink. Cost to the organization is employees spend time in meetings trying to dissolve this. Just think of a jury. If you've ever been ever in a jury, you got 12 people coming in a jury and 12 people not from a similar background, completely different. Some are educated, some are everyday workers. There's nothing wrong with everyday worker. My mom was a good Polish clean lady and raised 8 of us. So I really appreciate people that start from the bottom up. She's an immigrant here. I came over, so I'm not looking at that. Remember, I'm looking, but you have different viewpoints. Different cultures have different viewpoints of the same situation, the same crime. And probability, is he or she guilty, or was it just a matter of fact that they just did the wrong thing? So so you have people in there. Some people is real quickly make the decision. Boom, boom, it's cut. Other decisions, if it's kind of complex. And somebody's got to all get in it. Sometimes they never come up with decisions. It can be for days there. Where sometimes they say, instead of working with the group, let's go to the judge. Judge who gets all the case, he'll make that decision right away. I looked at all the case, I reviewed this, I got all this experience, boom. He'll make it within a day or so, maybe a couple of days. Remember? One person can make it faster, okay? More time to agree on it, okay? And now groupthink. When I'm looking at groupthink, a failure to think independently. After a while, when you're in a group, you become part of the group. When you look at cohesiveness is good. You want the group to think the same. But when the group is together for a long time, no new people, you start thinking as one body. One body's good when you're playing basketball or sport, but after a while, if you get something else there, you need somebody so they don't think the same way, because they're not challenged anymore, because they all say, well, we all think this way. That may not be the right direction, because we all have our blinders on, because after a while the group starts thinking this way. You know what I mean? So what you do, there's different methods. You have someone that's a devil advocate. That's what I usually do in groups. Or basically just bring a new group member. Once you bring a group member, it mixes up the match. And and a group member that has different cultural background, different learning, different experiences, what you bring in. So when you look at matrix group, or you bring a new, as a supervisor, we're going to talk about later on how you hire a person. You want, if you think there's a group thing or we're stagnant, you have to start bringing people with different ideas. And how are you going to bring them in? You bring them into the group. And, one or two, and kind of support the new ideas, and other people start thinking differently, because, you got to convince them. That's what consultants do. People in the group things, why do they bring consultants in? Because they're outside the box. I have no ties into this, and you're bringing those. That doesn't make sense. A lot of people say, George, you're so smart. I'm not smart. I'm not involved into all the processes. I'm outside looking at this. What the heck are you doing? And I don't say that out loud. Sometimes I do, but I basically come in there and say, hey, this doesn't make sense. I can't connect this. Why is it? And then people look back and say, boy, I didn't even see. And you have some examples. If I'm looking at, and I throw this since I remember, if you have some examples, when you grew up, your mom always used a square pan to do like banana bread. Everybody thinks square pan. And then you grew up using the square pan, and all of a sudden somebody says, let's do a round pan. Oh no, it has to be a square pan. Why? Because it heats better. It has more distribution. You don't know why. You just done it. But somebody else says, it doesn't make sense. Let's do a round pan. We could probably get better or flatter, be easier. Oh, I never thought about that, because you got so stuck in doing it one way, because we like things. We don't like change. Most human nature, we like change. We like to know what's going on. We like to be prepared and knowing the outcome up in the front. We don't want to. We're not too much of a risk taker. Okay, now some of the symptoms of groupthink: an illusion of being invulnerable, because I'm with a group; defending group's position against any objective. We're the group. We're a team. We're sticking together. A view that the group is clearly moral. Sometimes some of the stuff they're doing may be immoral, but we just compensate, or we convince ourselves. Stereotype views of opponents. Pressure against the group members who disagree. Remember, you don't like that? And that's for the supervisor. If you see the group is putting pressure on a person who's coming up with a new idea, that's a good idea, George. That's a good idea, Sally. Let's go forward. Let's think about this. We have to think about something like this. Self-censorship, we basically keep our mouth shut about something because we don't want anyone to know it. An illusion that everything agrees. Self-appointed mind guards. And I'll just leave it that way. It's easier. Okay, so that takes care of group things. Now, as a supervisor, I have to modify or reject the things. Remember, just because a group says that doesn't make sense. It doesn't follow company policy. This could be an illegal action, or this could be taken by our customers as reducing our quality, or another group may say this could be discriminatory. Remember, even though the group thinks about it, that's why you're in there. You're getting the feedback. You're still controlling the process. It's not like I just turn it over to them and say, it's all theirs. The group came with the decision. I had nothing to do with it. You're the leader. You're the supervisor. You're the owner of the company. It falls on you. Your whole thing is asking, what about this? Did you consider this? Not manipulating the group to come up to the decision you want. You want the right thing, but you're bringing them, did you consider this? Oh, I never think to consider. What about these action? And that's where you come up. Set group limits. Use 2 groups. And a lot of times you have a lot of companies, or if you have the process, you have two different stores or 2 different offices you're working at. Have them work independently, not talking to each other. And then when they both come up, you'll be surprised. They're going to come up with one solution with that group, and this group's going to come with another solution. That could be a different mixture of people, could be the environment. And now I bring the 2 groups together, and then I try to see what makes sense and combine both. And then people say, I never thought about that. And you'll be surprised. You'll be able to mesh things that both groups agreed on, and the other things are different. And that's where you come up with your brainstorming that we're going to talk about later. Avoid monopolizing one conversation. You have one person trying to push an agenda that could be political, and it could be, hopefully it's not you. Try not to push an agenda. You have some team members. They look like they're out there to help you, but they want their own self-interest. I have a whole section on political, how to be political savvy, for lack of better words. Focus on hearing the participant's opinion. If one person says, oh, that's a dumb idea, you say, hey, shh, listen, we're going to talk about brainstorming. Let the person finish. Give it some thought about it. You don't have to respond now, okay? Notice when participants are quiet and ask their opinion. Remember, some people, I'm not saying introverts, they're thinking, but they may not be the person that's going to come out to say, so they're like, hey, Sally, what do you think? Do you think this is the way we go? So if we vote right now, you're going to agree with it. Try to give her an open-ended question, or him an open-ended question, so they could kind of come back. And if they give it, you have to, as a supervisor, like priming a well. You go to forest preserves, you got to get the water. It's not all pressure there. You got to pump it up to bring it back up. Same thing. Once you get that person talking, and once the group, they feel comfortable in the group, so they don't think it's a stupid idea, then they're a contributor, and it stimulates the other people. I never thought about that. When I'm in group thinking, I just pop things out like that. Boom, boom. It's just the first thing that comes to my mind. Boom, brainstorming. It may not be the right thing, but it gets people talking. Okay, react positively when people contribute to their ideas. Now let's go with brainstorming. Using group decision models, idea generating process in which group members state their ideas. A member of a group records them, and that's somebody who's, it's not like you just say your secretary. In business, we call him a scribe or her a scribe. It's a person who knows how to spell well, and a person who has good penmanship. Most guys, and I'm not being stereotyping, I'm generalizing. Most guys, our penmanship is not the best unless you're an engineer, because you're trained how to write between the boxes, and the certain rulers you have. But most of us, after a while, my penmanship gets better because I'm printing more, I'm writing more, and I walk back. If your penmanship is not bad, still write. Don't say I don't write good. So you already are a defeated attitude. Okay, I'll just start right. And then after I write, I walk back to the end of the class, or walk back to the end of the meeting. Man, how could anyone read that? So I'm going to say I'm going like this, and you improve over time. It's practice, okay? No one make comment on any idea. Just throwing them out, to writing them out, putting it on the board until the process is complete. After the process is complete, we start finding what areas are combined, which ones we can combine, and you take all these different ideas and you narrow it down, usually to about 5 or 6 items that you could focus on, because you'll combine some of them. And here's a kind of an idea, an example. Group members state the idea, no comments at this stage. Group members records the ideas where the group can read it, and then the ideas are evaluated only after all of them have been recorded. And then you could still at that time discuss it or not. Okay, so that takes care of my group decision. Now the last thing, creativity. Before I go into this whole session of creativity, what they have, when I ask people, are you creative? And people say, no, I don't know. Most people take creativity and they look at as artistic ability. I'm not very artistic, but that doesn't mean I'm not creative. Because look, if you are late for work and you're looking at your creativity now, how do I get around my boss so he doesn't see me coming late, or something happens, I'm out of the box thinker, my car won't start, I started creative. What do? A different way. So basically, when I'm looking at creativity, it's not artistic ability. Creativity is thinking out of the box, looking at the whole thing, and looking at different ways of solving or different ways of approaching a problem or an opportunity or a solution. I'm not looking at always problems. A lot of people, when they say got to make a decision making, they're always looking at problems, because usually you have to make a decision. A problem decision is very important, but a lot of times, a lot of companies are making decisions on which market to open up. What product line should we start off? When should we open up this market? Who should be our test market? What is the time? What is our promotional campaign? What kind of training should I have? How should I provide? And these are all opportunities. There's nothing wrong with this, but I still have to make a decision when, where, how, and who's going to do it. Okay? Now, techniques. When I'm looking at certain techniques on this, and let me go back. Okay, techniques. Some of the techniques you could do, and I just threw this in brainstorming, using the group, building one idea over another. Each writes and passes on. We talked about that, brainwriting. Each writes that ideas and passes it on. That's another way of doing brainstorming. If you don't have a person up there, that's kind of a little. It works out well on the computer. Like, again, if a person feels uncomfortable with the spelling and everything else, even though he or she knows it, and it's not that they're not good spellers, it just got the pressure and they're not thinking right in their writing. It took me a long time to start. I spell fairly well, but when I write on a board, I had the pressure. Is it right? You're writing quickly. People are looking at you. After a while, you get more confident in that. Okay, synetics is metaphorical thinking. Makes similar strange. Makes strange similar. Okay. Now, problems seem unsolvable. That's why I do creativity. That's why I need it. Ability to bring about something imaginative or new. Remember, you got to be imagination. Imagination is bad. What's imagination? Daydream. What's daydream? I'm thinking about, you're thinking about, hopefully not you're on vacation, you're daydreaming or you're imagining what's going to happen. If I, in my mind, could see me doing a task and see me successful, I could always succeed it. If I, in my mind, see that I'm going to fail, I'm going to fail. And when I'm looking at imaginative, you have to think it in your mind. How does this piece fit before I actually put it into action? So you have to physically or mentally be able to look at it. So I'm looking out of the box thinking. Everyone's creative. I talked about thinking creativity when I'm looking at that, how to do clear away major sources of stress. You can't be creative if you're worried about people are going to make fun of you in their research, what others have already done similar situations. They've already done it here, but that's not. But could I utilize 90% of that and just adjust it to my situation that works well? That's being creative. That's using the resources. Introduce as many new situations and changes as you can, and meetings to talk out the issues with others, bringing new faces, bringing in new individuals. How to creative work environment. The supervisor. Here's what you have to do as a supervisor. You have to establish the work climate and support creativity. I tell my employees, you could come up with a new idea to do the process as long as you could at least think that it will save money and it would be a good investment. So I said, you could come with an idea, I'll fund it. I'm not going to fund it for everybody. I'll fund one. You try it out in the field. You try it out in the office. Come back to me later, in a month or something else. I'll pay for it. And then you give me your evaluation. And a lot of times, people say, they're going to always come back, because they're supported. They want us, and not going to look bad. No, because if I say yes, I'm going to try it on other things. I'm going to expand it to more than one individuals and get their feedback. But they already did the work. A lot of times they're going to say, this works, but man, it's not really the good stuff. I used to do software evaluation. I'm not a programmer. They would always say, let's give it to George, off-the-shelf software. See if he could use it. Because I'm not a programmer, an everyday user. I could use it, I figured out, use it, and then that's one thing. So George could use it, it's flexible, it's easy enough to use it. But I'm also evaluating, will this software, just because I use it, it's easy, does it make sense? And will it resolve the issue? And how could I put that software or that application within the existing process? Remember, a process of mapping in business, similar to manufacturing. I add a new component, it's going to change my assembly line. I add a new software, it's going to change the whole process. Hopefully it's going to be better in improving the process. Sometimes I say the software is too complicated. A lot of times I'll meet with a client and they basically have software. They bought this big software. It does all the whistles, blows. I said, you're only 3 people. This is something that's for a corporation. You only even use 99% of it. Why are you using this? Use QuickBook. Use some other kind of software that to your application. Learn on it, and then as you need it, as your organization or your team grows, then you bring in the more complex. But you already have a good feeling of what you're looking for. Encourages creative thinking. Attempt to implement employees' ideas. They got the ideas and should give credit. I always give credit, even though they give me an idea and it's only maybe a few paragraph. I will write a whole page and I always say, this idea was by Jackie within my department. She provided this idea. And Jackie looks, I only gave you the idea. You did all the, I didn't even think about it. And once you thought about it, my mind started thinking, because I'm at a different level as a supervisor, how could I implement that and put that in there? Okay, so you give them always credit. Once I give them credit, other people are going to come up and give me an idea. If I'm going to take the credit, they're going to say, why give it to George? He looks good. Unless you want to get rid of George as a supervisor, but most people want some credit in there. And once they have the credit, other people are going to say, hey, he's got recognition. Hey, I got this other idea. You have to create the environment. Or you say, that's a stupid idea. What the heck you come up with an idea? Don't even bother me. We don't have time. We're at companies. This is the way we do it. We're always going to do it this way. That is not a creative organization. That is not a learning organization. That does not stimulate creativity. That's after a while you become stagnant because this is the way we've done it, and we don't ever want to change. So what you have to do to be to have a creative work environment, you always change it. You always come up with new ideas as supervisors, and then your team are going to pick up. George likes new ideas. And new ideas, if I give George new ideas, he looks good, we look good, I get a promotion, George is happy, I'm happy. You see how you're working? My boss, remember we talked about earlier, how do I manage my manager? I come up with ideas, not my ideas, my team comes up with ideas. Then all of a sudden he could say, this team in my region came up with ideas, or this work group came up with this idea. And now I'm looking good, my manager's looking good, because he could bring it up to the next level up, and all of a sudden we're a learning organization, and everyone is happy, and we're still learning. Not only happy, but it's sustainability, and gives us a competitive edge within our department. They're going to replace us, and we're successful, and we have a higher return. Not only that we get raises, because as the company grows, we could grow within the organization. Our customers are happy, our stockholders are happy, everyone is happy with us. Okay, now, when an idea fails, and ideas fail, they all don't work. Supervisor, now, hey, we tried it, didn't work. Let's try it another time. That's good. At least we tried it. So you didn't knock the person down. You failed. It's a sign that people are trying. Helps employees see that they can learn from failure. Okay, this worked. What can we do? What can we do differently next time? Or even when we do the alternative, okay, when we looked at that, where did we miss this? Maybe we went too quickly. Maybe we should have did a test sample first. Maybe we should have did more research. Maybe we should have a focus group. Maybe we should try it out in a larger office or smaller office. Or maybe we should do it in incremental steps. Those are all things that failure is going to come around. Everyone that was successful failed over and over, but they didn't give up. They said, this didn't work, let's change the variable. This didn't work, change the variable. But if you're doing it the same time over and expect different results, that's when they say when you're crazy. Or, I'm not going to go into that, but that's what they say. That's the same outcome. You put the same thing in there, you're going to get the same results, okay? Helps employees see they can learn from failure, and do not try to pass the blame on someone else. Hey, it failed, didn't work out. We're all a team, remember? Okay? Now, when I look at employees offer suggestions. Supervisors should listen attentively and look for positive aspects of the idea, because that also helps with self-confidence of the team. That also helps with intrinsic ability of the team. That also helps empower the individual. It does everything else where I want to work for this organization. It's not only for the money. They value my input, and they reward me for the input that I come in there. Okay? Let me move this over so you can kind of see where we're at. Okay, creative work environment. Okay, we had this. Sorry, excuse me. Okay, how to improve? Quantity of ideas. You can't have too many. Sleep on it. Sometimes you have ideas, go back, think about it. Remember, when you do brainstorming should be, if you do any kind of activities, come up with a brainstorming, maybe, I think, research and everything else I've been doing, 10, 20 minutes to max. 20 minutes to max. After 20 minutes, you're not brainstorming, you're complimenting on it, you're thinking on it, you know what I mean? So when I'm looking at, I'm looking at brainstorming, stop it, sleep on it, come back tomorrow, and think about it. How I work, I pop up ideas, but that doesn't necessarily mean I agree with them right now, even though my own ideas. It's when I'm driving later, I'm stressless, I'm driving the traffic, I'm stuck in traffic, and things just come up. It just pops into my mind. Oh, I didn't think about this. That's a good idea. Or it will work. You see what I mean? So sometimes it's better to sleep on it and be persistent. Now, what are some barriers to creativity? Accept that failures by employees will occur. Don't blame them. You're going to lose some money, but you'd rather lose a small amount of money than roll out the whole thing, and you're basically keeping that product going because you don't want to look bad because you spend so much money. Okay? Now, allow time for creative thinking. Avoid isolation. So you shouldn't be always together. You have the people brainstorming, throwing ideas at me. You're thinking different ways. Timeliness. When I'm looking at this different time frames, make decisions timely. Do not rush on some decision. Fear of failure. Shouldn't be a fear of failure. Within a team, we all fail. We all make mistakes. That's why I say I'm dyslexic. I didn't pass all my classes. When I was starting off in high school or in grade school. I mean in college. But I got better. Then all of a sudden I'm all A's and A's. And I got my PhD. I got my doctors. But it didn't come easy. I had a lot of stumbling blocks. I could say it's not worth it. I kept on going. You had to be persistent, and that's what you have to do. If you're persistent, you become successful. Okay, so failure is just one of them. My daughter rarely fails, so when she failed an exam, I said, "Hey, very good, Dad. Why are you happy? I failed." I says, "Because now you know what it feels to fail and what happens to failure." I can walk away and hide, or I say, okay, I messed up. I got to get up. Look at the Olympics. People are ice skating. They practice, and all of a sudden they do one slip or fall down. Then they come up, oh, I'm going to walk right. They get up, and they keep on going. They say, okay. And sometimes they come pretty darn close. They may not get number one, but they come in number two because they did not give up. They just picked up right away and moved on, okay? Criticism, don't make fun of people. Supervisor, shadow thinking like them. Never done it this way. Those are some barriers, and that's basically on creativity. So I think I'm over. I always make mistakes, but I think I've covered everything in with about 20 or 22 minutes. This is a supervision series that you're taking me with within a college level or within a training session that I'm doing, or some workshops that I sometimes do on from a supervisor perspective on problem solving, decision making, and creativity. And all that is you as a manager is to stimulate your team so they start being good problem solvers, know how to make decisions, and come up with creative ideas, which makes you look good. And if you look, remember, they're not looking at what I did as a first line supervisor, is how I got my team to basically perform and come up with new ideas. And that's when I start moving up to the next level of first line supervisor. I go from a first line supervisor manager because I know how to manage team. I know how to get people to work together, and I know how my teams, when they leave, they're problem solvers, they're creative. So when they go anywhere else, they say, where did you learn those techniques? How do you do this? How do you get your people to do this? Because I developed the team. That's the job of a first-line supervisor or a business owner. Develop the people working for you. I know some people are going to go different teams. I develop them, but I still got the network and the connection. Again, my name is Dr. George Mochocki, and thank you for listening to the series, and I'll see you in our next series coming up. Okay? Bye.